Welcome to the Nourish You Podcast, where we question the traditional model of dieting and nutrition and focus on choice, fun, and health for the whole mind, body, and spirit. I'm Jana Maurer, a non-traditional registered dietitian and well-being expert, and I want to challenge you to take 2% of your day today, listen to this episode, and make this your health win for the day. Pop in your earbuds, strap on your walking shoes, or pour a big glass of wine, whatever you need for today, and tune out the world as much as you can for the next 30 minutes, and let's fill up your cup. Hi, and welcome back to the Nourish You Podcast. I am Jana, and I am so happy to be back recording. You may have noticed that there is a break between some of the previous episodes and today's first podcast. And so I wanted to give a little bit of context of why there was a break and just share with you some different things that I learned during that time. So I started the podcast, the Nourish You Podcast, really because I thought that I had to do that as the next step in growing my business. I love the idea of podcasting. I love the idea of being able to share thoughts and be able to talk them through. And I also love the idea of connecting with other individuals and them sharing their journey. But what I wasn't mindful of and what I can typically get myself into just with my own personality is trying to do all the things and do all the things on my own. And so I added one more thing to my plate, podcasting, which I had never done before. I was so thankful for a lot of support in trying to navigate how to get it set up and all the things. But the reality is that I added one more thing to my plate that actually ended up being 20 more things. And I've said this, if you've connected me with on other platforms, if you've seen me in lives, you know that technology and I, we're not BFFs, right? Technology and I, it's just a huge learning curve. And so I found myself doing something that I really wanted to do, but finding a hard time to ask for help and trying to do all the things. And so I had to press pause because we were still, mid-pandemic, and it was too much. It was beyond my capacity, and it was not becoming something that I enjoyed doing. It was becoming more, task-oriented, and I was really starting to resent it. And that's not something that one sits well with me. It's not, how I coach individuals. I always, if you're a coaching client of mine, or if you, again, you tune into any of my platforms, you know that I'm a huge person on knowing our capacity and being mindful of your systems should not solely rely on you doing more. And I think I share that with my coaching clients so much is because it's something that I struggle with myself, of knowing that the systems that are created are actually meant to make your life easier. And they're also meant to be able to not feel like you have to do all the things. So I intentionally took a pause and I connected with other women that were in business, and I really went through, what's working, what's not working. I actually had a marketing coach that I was working with at the time, and she had me do an exercise where I took all 3x5 cards and I listed out all the things that I was involved in. And I categorized them and said, is this working? Is this not working? Do I actually like doing this? Is this giving me a return? And the podcast kept coming back as one of the things that I really loved doing. I loved doing it, but in order to make it continue to work, I needed to ask for help. And I don't know if anyone else out there that's tuning in can resonate with this, but I can suck with asking for help. It feels I don't know, I feel like it's some way, I feel like I'm a failure. I feel like, okay, I couldn't do all the things, but that makes no sense. When we really talk through that and talk it out, it limits us, and it actually keeps us connected with our fears. It doesn't keep us connected with abundance whatsoever. And so I had to ask for help in order to bring this podcast back, which was something that I really enjoyed. I had to find a way, and I had to create a system where I could do what I loved. I could be in my zone of genius and I could connect with you all here, but that I wasn't doing it all on my own. So reintroduce Nourish You 2.0, or introduce, I guess, Nourish You 2.0, where I have a whole team behind me that has been amazing. They're supporting me in making sure that this podcast gets up and running and can do all the things. So I wanted to share just a little bit about why I took that break and what you can anticipate, also moving forward. So while I took that break, it was also a time where I stepped away from actually a lot of different responsibilities. So during that same time, I was working full time and still had, my side hustle or Health Wins with Jana. And Health Wins with Jana was continuing to grow and continues to grow. And I was at my capacity. Like I said, I was beyond my capacity. And so I decided to step away and go part-time with my full-time position. And I learned that it is okay to not have to feel always in stress mode. It's okay to actually enjoy the day and not feel like time is fleeting. It's okay to not constantly have to be on 24/7 in order to make it work. And it's okay to be able to allow others to come around you to be able to do all the things. So it was really a very introspective time. Actually, the last 2.5 years have been that way. And I don't know if you can resonate with this. I'd love to hear if this is something that you resonate with. But I feel like, through COVID, I just really stepped into understanding aspects about the world, one. That's a whole other thing. But also about how I showed up in the world and the fears that I was continuing to connect with that kept me spinning, but didn't keep me productive. So I don't know if you can resonate with that. I'd love to hear, if that is something that you resonate with, is are your fears just keeping you spinning and in this cycle? Or are they actually being productive in your life? And for me, I will share, they were just keeping me spinning. They were not being productive. There was no productive bone in that whatsoever. To the point where I had a panic attack. I thought I needed to go back on anxiety and depression medication. And, I wasn't in a good space. And so that is always a great, the body keeps score and it always wins. And when that happens, your body is telling you something is off. Something is not aligned. Something needs to be adjusted. And our role is to listen. It's not to be the boss of, it's not to try to figure out a way around. It's not to justify. It's not to neglect. Our job is simply to listen. So stepping into listening, it was that time to say, okay, what needs to be shifted? What needs to be adjusted? How can we continue? How can I'm speaking for myself with this. How can I put the pause button and start the process of disconnecting from stress and anxiety being my normal state? And that was really hard to do. But sometimes you have to step back or press pause in order to really launch yourself forward. So again, some reasons why I took a break, some things that I learned, and also what I want to just focus on moving forward. So Nourish You, I always say, if you have the same thought 100 times throughout the month, that is really God speaking to you, and it's time to listen. It's not just a crazy idea, or it's not just something that needs to be pacified or whatever. That is God speaking to you. And when we really hone in and listen to that, in so many ways, I feel like it just allows our light to continue to shine. And so God kept saying to me, share your voice, Jana, share your voice. just share your voice, whatever comes out, just share it. And I was really, really hesitant and still continue to, struggle with that idea of sharing my voice of like, why would someone even want to listen to this type thing? But the reason why I want to continue to be in this space is because not only for my own struggle with health and well-being and self-worth and self-esteem and body image or whatnot, just sharing the coaching aspect, I have the opportunity to connect with hundreds of people in their life stories. And I want to be able to share out lessons learned from that or observations from that to be able to help you in your journey. And that is really what like connection is all about. That is really what I think just like living and sharing your life experience is all about. And we connect through stories. Stories can transform our lives. And so moving forward, I want to be able to focus on the stories that can change our life. And it will be myself. I'll be, speaking to different topics. I'll be sharing stories of my own journey or the journey of others that I come across. But also I'll be connecting. So every other episode. So one episode per month will be my own voice here. The other episode will be I'll have an interview where I will be inviting in other professionals or individuals that have been on this healing journey, this health journey, and we'll just go back and forth and talk about different topics at hand. So I'm really excited to bring that to you and really excited to continue to share my voice in this space. So some things to just keep in mind for this podcast is it's going to follow my 2% rule. So I firmly believe that we can take care of our health and well-being and practice self-care with 2% of our week. So I went and nerded out and calculated all the numbers and all the minutes and all this other stuff. And 2% per week comes out to a little less than 30 minutes per day. So I rounded it to 30 minutes. And 30 minutes per day is what we can give ourselves to be able to practice self-care, to be able to engage in healthy activities, to be able to nourish our soul, all the things that we talk about as it relates to our health journey. And so I want to keep these podcasts, particularly when I'm speaking, they're going to keep to that 2% rule of 30 minutes. So this could be your health win for the day. Taking 30 minutes, making it your health win, and tuning into this podcast. We'll keep it to that 30-minute mark. And then when I do have guests, it will be around 60 minutes. So I hope that you will continue to join in. So I wanted to share a little bit on this topic as we reintroduce the Nourish You podcast of the idea of self-care. So this is a really grand topic that self-care means so many different things for so many different people, but it's one area that I found most of us, and I'm going to add myself into this equation too, really struggle with. This idea that we care for ourselves, and I will add in a routine fashion, right? Like in a consistent routine fashion where we are regularly taking care of our own needs, wants, desires, thoughts. That is self-care. And I thought that it was really interesting because the idea that self-care has, there's just so many different misnomers on, what is self-care? What is it not? Why do people struggle with it? Why does it seem like easier for others? And I wanted to really step into defining what self-care is, defining what it's not, and really talking through why we might struggle with self-care as a whole. So before I really get into it, I want you to think about what does self-care actually mean for you? because again, it means something different for every single person. But let's start with what self-care is not. So oftentimes it's out there that self-care, has to be expensive, or like that bougie aspect or whatever. I'm not hip on all these things, so forgive me if I get it wrong. But the idea that self-care is expensive, that it's going and getting your nails done, it's getting your hair done, it's getting facials and massages and all these things that cost a lot of money on a routine basis. And self-care, that's not self-care. Like, self-care does not need to cost money to do it right. So I want to really, again, like, we're laying this foundation of what self-care is not. Self-care is not expensive. Self-care is also not time-consuming. So self-care does not need to consume large amounts of your time to be effective. In fact, we've seen the benefits of 1 minute, giving yourself 1 minute. Think about that. Like, if I was just to stop talking for 1 minute, or if you were to time yourself, or have you ever done an exercise for 1 minute where you're like holding plank? Oh my good God, like that is torturous. So 1 minute a day doesn't sound like a lot, but when you actually practice it, it has profound changes in how you feel. So the idea that self-care has to be like, oh, I have to go and do 2 hours every single day in order to really, again, and I'm air quoting, do it right, that is not self-care. Self-care does not have to be consuming to really step into those acts where you are being mindful of you. And then the big one that I hear a lot is that self-care is selfish. So this idea that if you are taking care of you, or heaven forbid, if you start putting you on your own calendar, then you are being selfish. So the idea, or self-care, really is a practice or that routine that allows you more connection, not only more connection with yourself, but also with others. Typically, we also see higher productivity levels, and we also see a higher sense of happiness, not only for you, but also those that are around you. So I really this is actually something that my counselor shared with me, because I was really struggling with this idea of selfishness when it comes to self-care. You guys just know that anytime we're talking about a topic, I probably struggled with it for a long time. So I'm right there with you. But my counselor said, Jana, what if we made it where you were just being self-full? You are being full of yourself in a really, really healthy and good way, so that you can not only, feel good, but you can also help others in feeling good. So when you feel better, you do better. And the idea that you are being selfish for taking care of your needs is something that comes up a lot, but that has nothing to do with self-care. So what self-care actually is it is an opportunity to connect with yourself. It's time to listen to your own thoughts, your needs, your desires, your feelings. When you engage in self-care, you give yourself an opportunity to connect with you. Self-care is also, moments of kindness towards you. So it is, checking in with your self-talk. How's your self-talk doing? Is it more negative? Is it more positive? Is it more neutral? Where are you? It's taking that break and not having to push through. This is a big one, especially as we've seen, with working at home longer, or working from home. We typically are working longer, or just pushing through the day, and we are neglecting a lot of other aspects of our life, but also of the care of our bodies, and not taking those breaks. And it's really a time to practice self-compassion during difficult times. The last couple of years have been pretty difficult. And with self-care, it allows us to give our own bodies compassion to be able to continue to navigate potentially, continued difficult times, and really taps into the idea of being more resilient. And then also third, it's an opportunity to build self-trust and esteem with our own self. So when you look at, I always share this with my coaching clients, You have a relationship with everything around you. You have a relationship with yourself, which we oftentimes forget. We have a relationship with our friends, our family, our spouses, our kids, our animals. We have a relationship with every single thing around us. And oftentimes, when we are looking at self-care, the relationship that you have built with yourself is not built on trust. It's actually built on moments of betrayal. So I want to pause there for just a second, because it's a really, really big concept to understand, is that we oftentimes don't feel comfortable or confident in routinely taking care of ourselves, because every time that we step into self-care, or maybe not every time, but maybe a lot of the times, we actually go against what we say we're going to do. So it shows up as, I know what I need to do, I just don't do it. And so when we go against what we know we need to do, that's actually a betrayal to the self, and it doesn't build trust in our own abilities to be able to care for ourselves. So when we routinely engage in self-care, we're actually retraining our brains and our bodies that it can trust us and that we will care for us, which helps build that momentum to keep going. It helps build our self-esteem, our self-confidence, and keeps us in the game longer. So self-care is the practice of being kind and compassionate to yourself with the goal of improving your emotional, mental, and physical well-being. So I really want to highlight the distinction there too, is that self-care is not strictly in the physical realm of wellness. So we have 8 different realms of wellness. Typically speaking, when we talk about health and well-being, we highly focus on that physical realm, which is diet and exercise, which certainly are part of the equation. But self-care actually expands into the other realms of health and well-being and includes our emotional and our mental well-being as well. So this really, again, it's the practice of being kind and compassionate to yourself to improve your overall health and well-being. So what does this look like? Some different examples of practicing care could be, taking your breaks and your lunch during your work days. It could be setting boundaries, time boundaries. So a big one that shows up is like when it comes to, social media, it's so easy. It can be so easy. And I am so guilty of this as well to, at the end of the day, you finished everything and now it's like your time to be with you. And you just want to be like numb and mindless and not want to have to care about anything. And it could be so easy to just get on social media and scroll and scroll and scroll. You start at 9:30 and before you know it, it's like 12 o'clock and you're like, what the heck? Where did time go? So even being able to set those boundaries, that is an act of self-care. Saying no. No is a complete sentence, and it does not have to be explained. It does not have to be justified. No is a complete sentence, and saying no can be an act of self-care. Being able to sit in silence, calling a friend, having fun and laughing really hard, getting adequate sleep, making time for movement, expressing our emotions, getting outside and connecting with nature. These are just all different examples of how you can care for yourself. And I want to note, again, none of those cost money. It's not expensive. It doesn't have to cost you anything to care for yourself. So I get this question a lot, or, a lot of individuals will share this with me, is like, why is self-care so hard? Why does it feel so hard? Why do I say this and do something else? Like, why, tell me, like, I need help in this area. So here's why. When we are talking about self-care, we are actually talking about self-worth and self-love. So it's known as the worthiness of care. And if you don't think that you are worthy and struggle with self-esteem, why would you be worthy of self-love and self-care? So it really, when we're looking at self-care, we're actually tapping into the idea of, do you feel that you are worth your own time? And do you feel that you can give yourself that time? So big barriers here are you have stuff to do. You have all the stuff to do. You don't have time. Just got to do all this stuff. And it's so easy to take care of everyone else's stuff that we forget about you in the equation. It can also be scary to feel really, really good. So I will give you an example of how this shows up in particularly if the goal is weight loss. I have had a lot of women share with me that they've lost weight and they feel really good and they're scared of feeling really good because they're scared that that feeling is going to leave them. Or this also shows up as you've lost a lot of weight and you're struggling to keep it off because now more than ever you've received compliments and you don't know what to do with those compliments. It scares you. That is where we can, definitely see the rebound aspect. That's where we can, start giving up, air quoting, giving up on ourselves and bringing in those old habits is because that's too much for our systems. We don't think that we're worthy of that. And so this is where it comes in of like, we give up on ourselves in those moments because we feel like we're not worthy of it. And then again, the big one is you feel selfish for taking time for yourself. But really looking at, is it selfish to feel good? And when you feel good, don't you do better? Like you do better not only for yourself, but you do better for your friends, your family, the world at hand. You have so much more energy. You're thinking better, you're thinking clearer, all these things. In no way is this a selfish act. It's actually very selfful. We only take care of the things that have value to us. So not only are we looking at the worthiness, but we're also looking at, do you feel that you have value? In your day-to-day equation, do you feel like you have value? Do you see your own value and worth? So these questions that I'm asking, these are certainly ones that you can take and sit with. You can journal on. I have, for myself, I have Own Your Life a journaling session. I do it every, Friday morning where I ask myself these questions and I'm really real with myself of saying like, what is the answer? Because I don't know, while that might be a okay first answer because sometimes we've never been asked certain questions, it is not an answer that we get to stay with. If you don't know, now that becomes an opportunity to explore and get curious about what is the answer for you, because that not knowing could actually be blocking the blessing that you're looking for. All right, so the idea of this is we really need to connect with self-care and self-esteem. You can't practice self-care without self-esteem, unfortunately, right? Sometimes can it just be easier? Like, I totally understand that. But this is where we can really build our muscle. In particular, the self-esteem aspect is really connected with how we identify ourselves. Identity is connected to who do you believe that you are? And that's very much so connected to the aspect of our self-talk. So what is your self-talk that you continually repeat to yourself in the equation of self-care? Are you saying like that you don't matter? Or are you saying that you don't have time? Are you saying that this is just not going to be you? Or are you saying like, why does this even matter? Like, what are you saying to yourself? And identify those within your self-talk. But here I want to just really quickly, I want to wrap this up because I want to be mindful of our time. But I want to leave you with some different questions to use as you're developing your self-care routine, as you're looking at, okay, do you feel worthy? Do you feel that, this is something that you really want to step into? These are questions, and this is part of the first step in my care model that I share with my coaching clients is let's get curious. Let's get curious about what this looks like. If you have for years been struggling with taking care of yourself, making time for yourself, putting you on your own calendar, something ain't working, right? Something is not working. So we don't want to repeat what we've already done maybe for the last 20 years. That does not make sense. We want to stop, press pause and say, okay, let's get curious. This isn't a bad thing. We're learning about you. Let's take off the lens of judgment and criticism, and let's just have an understanding of what this looks like. So I don't know what you're doing right now, but if you're around a piece of pen and paper, or if you have your phone with you and you want to just take, notes on your notes app, certainly do that. I want you to write down these 6 questions to explore as you're developing your own self-care routine. Question number 1. What one change would make the biggest difference in your ability to regularly practice self-care? Would that look like more time boundaries? Would it look like more social media boundaries? What one change, just one, what one change would make the biggest difference? Number 2, are there any negative thoughts about who you are that are holding you back? For example, I hear this one a lot, and I thought this one on my own journey. I'll never be skinny. That is a negative thought that is holding you back from actually achieving the goal that you might want to achieve. Number 3, what thoughts of scarcity do you believe at your core? For example, I don't have enough time. Another really big one is I don't have enough money, or I can't spend that on myself. Yet, you would spend that money on someone else. It's not about the money. All right, number 4. Who taught or told you that your needs weren't important? I'm pausing on this one because this is actually a big one. Who taught or told you that your needs weren't important? Was it society? Was it your parents? Was it work? Was it yourself? Did you convince yourself? Who taught or told you that your needs were not important? Number 5, what positive thoughts can you begin to focus your attention on? I give this example of when we're really thinking about positive thoughts in ourselves, it can be really helpful to create a list of 10 things you love about you. Not 10 things that you love about your physical aspect, 10 things that you love about who you are internally. So what positive thoughts can you begin to focus your attention on? And then number 6, can you believe you are worthy of your own time? Even if it is the last minute of the day. So can you believe you are worthy of your own time? Those are the 6 questions I'm going to leave you with for today's podcast, and for really taking this opportunity to jot those down, journal, ponder them, think about them. Let's get curious. Let's find answers, because if you if you continue to struggle with being able to routinely care for yourself, there is something connected where we don't feel that we're worthy enough. We don't feel that we have the value. There's something deeper connected to that than just, I don't have enough time, right? That's actually just an excuse. So we want to peel back the layer and say, what is the real answer, so that we can actually create a real solution to that. All right. I hope you have enjoyed this podcast. If this really resonated with you, I would love for you to leave me a comment in the comment section below. Feel free to share my podcast. Until next time. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day today to tune in. If you loved today's content, leave me a review letting me know exactly what you liked best, and remember to share my podcast with others to join the Nourish You community. If you want more great content like this between episodes, I encourage you to join my mailing list. You can click the link below in the show notes, or check out my website at www.healthwins.org, and let's stay in touch. Until next time, I'm Jana. Talk soon.